Physics students, good evening. Mr. Fugit here again. So here we're going to be looking at the second part of your final problem on homework number 1 over density. This is problem 000C, part 2. You will notice that as you go through your different homework assignments, some of them will have one part, some of them will have two, some will have three. Typically, when you have a problem that is two parts, you'll be using information from the first part on the second. So, that being said, let's read part 2 of your last problem. It says this: what would be the mass of the ball bearing, referring to the ball bearing from the previous problem, if it were made out of pure gold? The density of pure gold is 19.3 grams per centimeter cubed. Now, to give a little bit of context here, that value 19.3 is a pretty high value. If you remember from the first couple of weeks of school, we did some work finding the density of some different objects. Things like wood, if you remember, which was about 0.6 to 0.7 grams per centimeter cubed. We found the density of aluminum to be about 2.7 grams per centimeter cubed. And some of the various steel and brass ball bearings that we dealt with was in the 7 to 9 range grams per centimeter cubed. So this value for the density of gold, 19.3, tells us gold is an extremely dense or very heavy metal, which is something that most people probably don't know about gold. Okay? Even though it's malleable, meaning it can be easily molded, it is still very heavy. So, that being said, what we're looking for here is we're going to see if what the mass of this ball bearing would be if it were made out of pure gold. Now you'll notice we're only given one value here in our problem statement. Okay, we're told that the density of gold, rho, is 19.3 grams per centimeter cubed. Okay? Now, given that this is the only piece of information we're presented with, we need to dip back into our previous problem. Now, we're asked here what the mass would be. So, some of you might be tempted to say, well, aren't we given a mass in the previous problem? Okay. Now, that is the mass of a ball bearing, given that it's made of some unknown material. Okay, we don't know what its density would be. Okay. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be taking that same volume and using that volume to determine what our new mass would be if our material was gold. So, from my problem, what I determined the volume to be, okay, in my previous calculation was this: 0.524 centimeters cubed. Now again, your value for volume is going to be different based on what you calculated in part 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the density that we were given of gold and the volume that we calculated in our previous problem to predict what's our new mass going to be. Okay, so let's come to a new page and see if we can solve for this new mass. So, now that we're on our new page, we do have an equation for density, and our equation for density looks like this. Density of any object is the mass of that object divided by its volume. Now what we're looking for here is we're trying to get mass by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by volume, on both sides of my equation. And what that's going to do, I'll clean this up just a little bit, I apologize. What that's going to do is that's going to allow us to get that variable m by itself. So multiplying by v on both sides, we'll get rid of v on the right-hand side. And I'll be left with an equation that looks like this. My mass, m, is equal to my volume from part 1 times my new density. So, given this new equation, let's plug in what we know. My volume was 0.524 centimeters cubed. And my density, for the sake of space, I'll try and do my best to represent this. My density, I apologize, was 19.3. And that was grams per centimeter cubed. Apologize about the space there. So, what I'll do now is I'll plug these values into my calculator. 0.524 times 19.3. That will give me a value of mass, if I round to 3 significant figures, of 10.1. Now, if you remember, we were always going to deal in SI units. So, ideally, my mass here should be in grams. So So the other way I can know is that if I look at the units that I have, so if we come over here for just a moment, I have centimeters cubed on top. I multiply by grams divided by centimeters cubed. So from the standpoint of my units, these centimeters cubed should cancel out, and I'll be left with just grams as my unit of mass here. Right? In a similar way that we utilize really multiplying by volume to get rid of it up here on top, those units will also cancel out to leave us with units of grams for my mass. So, using my volume from the previous problem, as well as the new density I'm given, the mass of my ball bearing, if it were made of pure gold, should be 10.1 grams. So that's what I would plug into my value on Quest, and I would be, if I check my answer key, yep, my answer key tells me I should have a value of about 10.1 grams, which is what we solved for. So as always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or a message on Remind. I'd be happy to get back with you. Good luck.